welcome to Paradigms at paradigms.life, the radio show and podcast that brings you inspiring people with visions of a viable future for life on Earth that includes humans. Hi, I'm Baruch, host of the show. Thanks for tuning in. A lot of the guests on this show are musicians, and a lot of them talk about listening and how important it is to listen when they're making music with others. My guest on this episode is also a musician and talks about listening. He's got a new record out, and he's going to tell us about that, and we're going to hear some of the music, and it's really enjoyable. And the whole thing about listening goes beyond music, listening to each other, listening to our own inner wisdom, and being able to tell the difference between what is actually worth listening to and what is propaganda and manipulation. But on this show, we listen to inspiration. So let's meet my guests right now on this episode of Paradigms. Quinn Sternberg, welcome to Paradigms.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. I just have been listening to your latest record, Walking on Eggshells. It's quite something.
Yeah, thanks for giving it a listen.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's not simple.
Yeah, there's a lot of little intricacies. I'm always hoping that it is easy enough to listen to despite being complex, but, varying degrees of success there.
Yeah, it's not work to listen to. It's definitely easy to listen to. It takes you on a ride. And the pieces are all very different from each other. I mean, they're emotionally, there's a lot of range on this record. Yeah. I'm curious how you as a bass player get your compositions, like how they come to you, especially since you're composing for all these other instruments. I mean, everyone who's composing is composing for other instruments, but you think of a bass player as more grounded in just the rhythm section. So I'm curious.
I compose on piano primarily. I'm kind of a hack on that instrument, but I'm able to play well enough to hear how a song will sound. My approach is kind of melody forward. Like I make sure I have like a clear lead to the song before just diving into some crazy chords or rhythms. And I want everything to support that melody. I like to leave it for the other players, kind of give them enough information that they know what to do on my charts, but leave it a little open for them to do their thing with the song.
That's exactly what I was actually wondering about, because it's very melody driven and you're a bassist. So I wondered about that. So that explains it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you have really, really wonderful players on this record.
Oh, yeah. It's a real treat to play with those guys.
It's really something else. I mean, your drummer, Peter Vernado, really great. Sam Taylor's sax is amazing. Nahum, I'm going to pronounce this wrong.
Yeah, Nahum Zadibel.
Nahum Zadibel. Great name, amazing guitarist. I mean, y'all are making great music together, and it's very easy to listen to. It's kind of got a rock and roll feeling to it in the jazz.
That's kind of part of the sound I was hoping to channel for this one. The last few albums have had some kind of, I like to draw along a lot of genres, but the last few albums I've put out one had a little bit more folk background. The last one, Cicada Songs, maybe was a little more hip-hop influence, and I kind of lean more into the rock for this one.
So Walking on Eggshells.
Yes.
Tell me about both that title and these songs and the emotional, mental place that this album is about for you.
I'd say this album kind of comes from, it's 8 songs and kind of 8 different feelings. I wanted to kind of tie them together, but the title track and the album, Walking on Eggshells, that kind of refers to sort of a mental state I was in, and a lot of people were probably in at the time I was writing these songs, which was kind of late COVID era, and a lot of people on the internet all the time, some fierce arguments. I know I was having a lot of mental stress just over trying to promote my music and be a band leader and be a freelance bass player, but still have love for music while trying to make a living doing more corporate things. So that's kind of the impetus for that track. And I thought that track was kind of a good embodiment of the sound for the record. So that's kind of why I gave it the title. There's kind of like a different feeling attached to each of these songs. Track 2, Inferiority Complex, is pretty self-explanatory, and that's a really hard song to play. So it makes you feel bad about yourself while you play it.
So it does. It lives up to its name.
Totally, yeah. A lot of shame. Green Eyed Baby is a song for my fiance Rachel, and so that's kind of more of a romantic and happy song. Ripples, more of a introspective, tranquil type thing. Yuri Gagarin's that's my take on the first ever space expedition. And so I was kind of thinking about the feelings of like terror, but also like awe and wonderment.
I'm talking with Quinn Sternberg about his new record, Walking on Eggshells. We're going to hear some of it now, and then we'll be back with more conversation, and we'll be listening to some music from Quinn's earlier records, Cicada Songs and Mind Beach. But let's start out with the title track of the new album, Walking on Eggshells, Quinn Sternberg on Paradigms at paradigms.life. We just heard 3 songs from Quinn Sternberg's new record, Walking on Eggshells. You just heard Ripple, and before that, Inferiority Complex. And we started out with the title track of the new record, Walking on Eggshells. And now let's get back to my conversation with Quinn Sternberg. How did you become a bass player? What drew you into music originally? And you said you clearly also play piano, but what brought you into the bass and music in general? What's the hook?
Yeah, I always kind of had a feeling I would be a musician in some regard. I took piano lessons, but didn't take it that seriously. But I was just always listening. My parents kind of exposed me to a lot of classic rock, so that was kind of my background. But I just always had my little portable CD player with me at all times as a kid. And I think I was just kind of a weird kid who thought the bass line sounded really cool to songs. Around like 9 years old, I would go with my mom to pick up my sister from her guitar lessons, and I would just stare at the basses on the wall. I kind of had some idea that that would be my instrument of choice. Just always kind of drawn to it.
Who are some of your favorite bass players?
On electric bass, I'm particularly drawn to Pino Palladino and Tim LaFave. Jaco Pastorius was obviously a big influence on almost all of us. I think a great rock bass player who was really underrated was Dee Murray, Elton John's player. I've been pretty inspired by him recently. On the upright side of things, I love kind of the more classic guys like Scott LaFaro and Paul Chambers, Sam Jones were big influences for me. More modern, I love Dave Holland, Larry Grenadier, Thomas Morgan, Joe Sanders, Harish Raghavan. But yeah, I try and kind of pick up little things from all of them and channel it into something that sounds like me.
I mean, bass players are kind of their own tribe. It's like drummers,
Yeah, the laid back, quiet type normally.
Had a really wonderful bass player on the show earlier this year, a guy named Freebo. He played with Bonnie Raitt for like the first 10 years of her career.
Oh, wow.
Big hair, big stash, sweet, sweet human being. And he's been making his own music and playing, sort of folky guitar and writing his own songs. But he's one of you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, we're tight.
I see that you're taking this album out and performing a lot, and I think that's a big part of your thing. You're not just a studio musician; you're a performer.
Yeah.
How's it going? Tell me about the shows.
It's been going well. I did my first tour as under like Quinn Sternberg. I've always done that as like a bassist on someone else's project in the past. That was about 2 weeks ago. We did a New Orleans date and 6 dates in the Midwest. And it was really fun. We played the songs trio, which was kind of a different way to approach it, but gave us some new kind of fun ideas. And that's something I want to be getting into more, is touring maybe in kind of short runs. I try and play at least every couple months locally, but for the original music stuff, it's hard to generate an audience if you're hitting it too often.
And where are you living now?
I'm actually living in Asheville, North Carolina, as of about 6 weeks ago. I was in New Orleans for 7 years before that. My partner got a nice job here, and we had kind of been thinking about a change of pace, but we found out that we were moving about 2.5 months ago. This is all a sudden change, but it's been great.
I know you're from Indiana. How did you end up in New Orleans?
I moved to New Orleans right after finishing college at IU. I was kind of drawn to the music there as a listener. I was maybe a little bit burnt out from the straight ahead jazz thing, just from being in school for 4 years. Love that music, but I was kind of wanted to go somewhere where I could focus a little more on electric bass and learn more about groove. It checked a lot of boxes as far as quality of life things. It's gotten more expensive, but it was pretty affordable when I moved there. I'm a hot weather guy, so it was a good fit, and I had a really good time there.
There's no place like New Orleans.
Yeah, it's special.
It's really special. I'm curious, what were some of the experiences you had there that really grew you? What stands out from your time in New Orleans?
I think a lot of the playing experiences with just kind of older guys who are from the city, just very personal, were really beneficial because it's kind of a different thing, the local players there, and it's something you only get there. So it was nice to have some regular gigs kind of playing in the style of the city. And then there were just some monster improvisers who really expanded my ears. I got to play a good bit with a steel guitar player, Dave Easley, who's just this really kind person who lives 40 minutes outside of New Orleans and is happy to play anyone's original music, but really heavy guy. He's been on Brian Blade's albums and just one of the foremost like masters of improvisation on the steel guitar. And there's just people like that there who are just very approachable and unassuming, but just absolute masters of the craft. And they'll give you their time if you're cool and want to learn. And just the Southern hospitality thing, I think, was great for me. Being from the Midwest, we're kind of polite, but maybe a little bit closed off. So it kind of makes you a better person having to talk to every person you see. And yeah, it's a beautiful community there.
We'll be back with more conversation with Quinn Sternberg, but let's hear a couple of tracks from one of his earlier records, Cicada Songs. And we're going to start out with the title track of that one, which is Cicada Song. Here we go. This is Paradigms at paradigms.life. What a Day. That's from Quinn Sternberg's album Cicada Songs. And before that, we heard Cicada Song. You can hear how different that music is from the new record, Walking on Eggshells. All right, we're going to get back now to my conversation with Quinn Sternberg. Favorite clubs? Favorite hangouts?
Yeah, my favorite club is Dos Jefes Cigar Bar. I played there a lot with my friend Michael Mason and a singer, Betty Shirley, who I worked with a lot. He's a great artist. Yeah, people describe it as the only place in New Orleans that hasn't changed at all since its inception. And it's just this really rowdy room. It sounds awesome. The crowd is rambunctious. Everyone's smoking cigars inside. It just brought out a certain energy. I thought every performance there was, something I would look forward to.
So Asheville's really different.
Yeah, there's some commonalities, but definitely change of pace. It kind of is like Bloomington, my hometown, in some ways. A little bit bigger and more going on. So it feels like a kind of happy medium between New Orleans and Bloomington in some ways.
Your music, the world, we were joking a little bit about the end of the world before we got going. What's your message? What are you sending out to people? When you're up there playing, I mean, there's the music, what comes through you, and the creativity of that, and the journey of discovery and playing, but you're sending it out to people. What's your sort of ethos around that? What is that for you?
That's a good question. I think when I play my music specifically, and with the players I've had on these records, it's a lot of communication and interplay between the group. And I would want the audience to kind of view it as an experience of humans communicating to create a single thing. And the audience is part of that too, giving the energy to the band to kind of try stuff we wouldn't. I think that kind of playfulness and collective improvisation thing is something I want people to hear and be drawn to. I also think my stuff kind of has something for everyone as far as drawing from different genres and like having a lot of dense stuff while still being somewhat accessible. So I would hope it would be kind of a gateway to some listeners who might not think of themselves as caring for jazz. Maybe they hear this stuff and think maybe I should check out Miles Davis or something. That's kind of how I got into jazz. Was I didn't really have any exposure to it, but then I heard things like Jocko and Roy Hargrove, RH Factor, that were a little more related to music I listened to, and that made me want to check out Clifford Brown and kind of go back to the source.
What are the things in the world at large that you feel strongly about, that affect you, that you are engaged with?
I'm a pretty, community-driven person. I try and just really be active in the lives of all my friends and family and tangential connections through that. Local politics would probably be more my priority than global things. And I think, if we all just take care of the people we're around and just show respect to those that we interact with, that can, that would branch out to the whole world community if everyone just really took care of their immediate people and kind of those they run into. Environmental issues are definitely something I'm concerned with and passionate about. I can't claim to be too active in environmental activism, but I think it's really important. I love to be outside and hope I can continue to be outside.
We'll be back with the final part of my conversation with Quinn Sternberg, but we're going to hear one track now from his album Mind Beach. This one's called Remnants. That's Quinn Sternberg, Remnants from his album Mind Beach. Again, you can hear how each record is really coming from a different sort of musical inspiration, different flavor. All right, here's the final part of my conversation with Quinn Sternberg. The record's out and you're playing it out, and often when people finish a project, some people just take a break and no new thing comes. Some people are immediately on to the next new thing. What's happening with you? What are you moving forward with?
My compositional arc tends to be writing a unit of songs that comes together as what seems like an album for me, and then really kind of making tiny tweaks until I get in and am able to record that. Then there's kind of a honeymoon period where I'm dealing with the mixes and mastering process, but I've normally written at least close to a full new album by the time one comes out. And this will really break the internet here, but I do have another batch of songs written. It's a matter of finding time to make the whole production side of it happen. But
Yeah.
that's kind of my process, is to just crank out a unit and work on it for a while until it manifests into a tangible thing.
So it must be interesting to be playing one set of music, or, playing sets out that include everything you've published up to now, while you're in the creative stage with something else.
I like to kind of mix up the set list with new and old songs, but I'm definitely always more itching to play the more current material. And my sax player, Sam, was good about encouraging me to throw a couple of the new non-recorded songs into our tour set list. So that was kind of fun to give people a sneak peek.
I do know that you like you said, you just played in New Orleans, and I think you have some gigs coming up soon.
I'm kind of working on booking little tour runs for late fall and winter right now. And that would likely have us kind of around the South and the Carolinas and potentially another Midwest stop. I'm definitely in a bit of a transition period, having just moved. So kind of just trying to take in the whole scene in Asheville and meet players and kind of be there to see what other people are doing here before I try and really push my project. But I'll hopefully be kind of doing some local things here before too long.
So it's like discovering a whole new scene.
Yeah. It's been a very welcoming place so far. I am working a little bit as a sideman, playing but cool. I've got a little bluegrass tour coming up and playing with a rock band and some jazz stuff. So it's a lot of different things happening here, which I like.
This is great. So is this full time for you now, music?
Yeah, well, it's been my sole employment since I was about 18. I did work part-time at a retirement center prior to that, but that's my only real world credential, if you will.
That's great.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my idea. You can't really move somewhere and immediately just expect to work every night. So it's a process, but that's ideally what I'd like to continue doing.
That's great, though. I mean, for a lot of folks, it takes a while before they can support themselves with their art. And so you've been doing that since a young age. That's really remarkable and very cool.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate to have, a lot of good friends who've kind of had my back and thrown me work and trusted me with their projects over the years. I do recommend anyone who wants to play full time, you should probably play bass. It's the easiest one to work on.
How much do you practice?
I try and practice at least an hour or two a day, but it can be kind of scattered between electric bass and upright bass and composing. Sometimes I'll do more. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but I try and get to the instrument and at least work on my mechanics every day. Hopefully get into some more creative stuff.
I think like most musicians would say, if you want to play and you want to be good, that's what you have to do. You just have to play. Yeah,
you have to practice a lot. And I would say listening should be happening an equal, if not more amount of practice. Because, when you're practicing, you're listening to yourself play. Ideally, you're listening to yourself play things you're not very good at. So just taking time to really do focused listening on all the masterful performances that we have access to now is pretty integral in that too.
And what would you say is really inspiring you most nowadays in life, in music, in anything?
I'm really enjoying the nature side of Asheville and having really beautiful weather in the summer. It's been nice just to be able to go outside and look at mountains every time I'm on a drive. Musically, I've been really kind of going back to listen to a lot of the Brian Blade Fellowship, which is a band that's inspired me for a long time, but I had kind of taken a break from listening to them and really enjoying their new album. Try and keep a healthy diet of rock music and hip hop, other things. Being here now, I'm trying to dive more into the Appalachian music and more country or bluegrass things to kind of get in the local style. A lot of things. I try and keep a wide palette.
Well, I love hearing sort of the amalgam in your music.
Yeah, it's a cluster, but sometimes works out.
Well, Quinn, it's a pleasure talking with you. It's a pleasure listening to your music, and you have a very gentle, mellow way about you, and the music has that too, as well as some real strength in there. So it's a wonderful combination.
Well, really glad you enjoyed it, and thanks so much for having me on.
It was a pleasure speaking with Quinn Sternberg, talking about his new record, Walking on Eggshells, his move from New Orleans to North Carolina, just getting a bit of the sense of his life. It'll be really interesting to hear the next album, which I believe is a bit more Appalachian inspired. Quinn talked about listening. It's so important to listen to what we hear outside us and to what we hear inside us, to listen to each other and to listen to ourselves, and to be able to tell the difference between what's worth listening to in terms of music, but in terms of ideas, intentions, and what isn't worth listening to. Sort of like the difference between really inspired music and factory-produced music, if you will. I think you know what I'm talking about. If you'd like to know more about Quinn Sternberg, his website is Quinn Sternberg Music, QuinnSternberg music.com. Check him out. Quinn, thanks for talking with me and putting out the music and listening to your inspirations. What would the world be like if we all really listened to our inspirations? Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Paradigms and that you'll visit our website, paradigms.life. Check out the archives and leave a comment. Maybe share some of your inspirations. I'm going to leave you with one more track from Quinn Sternberg's new record, Walking on Eggshells. It's called Yuri Gagarin, who was a Russian cosmonaut. And let's let the word for the week be listen. Let's listen. Let's listen inside and let's listen outside and really notice what we hear, how it affects us. What are our inspirations? What are your inspirations? All right, Baruch signing off for this episode of Paradigms. We'll be back next time with more inspiring people. We've got some cool episodes coming up. Until then, let's listen and be well. You've been listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.